Hey everyone, welcome to Star Wars Geek's Big Pimpin' Figure Tutorials. I am the Star Wars Geek, and today, since it's my first day of shooting video for my website and YouTube, I thought it would be a cool idea to do a little tour of my workshop, my studio area, show you guys where the magic happens, and go over some of the basic tools and supplies that I use to create the action figures, the custom figures that you're seeing here on YouTube and on my website. So as you can see, I'm taking a little wide angle shot of my entire space, and it may look like it's pretty neat, but it's not really very neat. It's pretty much a mess, but it's like an organized mess is what I like to call it, because I know where everything is. Okay, first thing I'm going to show you is the absolute most important tool that every customizer needs. Without it, I don't think you can, I personally couldn't do any work without it, and that tool is right here. No, I'm not talking about the glue gun. I'm talking about the iPod. Because without music, I don't think I could sit back here for 4 or 5 hours at a time like I do sometimes and work on custom figures. So as you can see, I've got my iPod here, and today we're listening to a little. Let's get that in focus. A little bit of Cowboys and Aliens. Great band out of, I believe, Texas. Would make sense, right? With a name like Cowboys and Aliens. All right. Anyway, let's get on with it. As you can see, there's a hot glue gun. Hot glue is really good for doing a lot of diorama projects. If you're going to work with foam core, hot glue is probably the best thing you can use to put foam core together, to attach it to each other, to attach pieces to one another. Super glue won't work. White glue works, but I find that hot glue works just a little bit better. It holds a lot better, and it makes a much stronger bond. Alright, next you can see what really is probably the most important tool for any customizer, and that is the Dremel. This is one of the newer models. It's called the Dremel Stylus, and as you can see, it's nice and small, it's compact, it's very lightweight, which comes in handy if you're going to be doing customizing or working on stuff for a long time, a long period of time. It fits nicely in your hand, it's got a nice ergonomic design to it. And like I said, it's very light. It's rechargeable, has no cords, and it's a pretty good little piece of equipment. The only drawback that I find to it, and maybe it's just me, maybe I got a special one, if I use it for too long, sometimes it becomes overheated and it gets really hot, so I get a little nervous sometimes when I'm working on projects for lengthy periods of time, and I'll Dremel for a little while and then I'll stop and I'll have to let it cool down because I'm always afraid that it's gonna, I don't know, burst into flame in my hand or something. There's a nice picture of the Incredible Hulk holding a Dianoga monster from the vintage Death Star playset. Over here, you can see I've got some like sandpaper and sanding pads. These are very useful if you're doing any kind of sculpting or cutting, because a lot of times you cut something, you get a sharp edge or you get an uneven edge. These sanding pads are what I'll use along with the Dremel to get everything nice and smooth. As you can see, there's a couple of different grades here. This one is a very coarse one, very coarse grade, and I have the fine and the super fine. And it's pretty much just like that. It's a three-step process. You start out with the coarse, and you go to the fine, and you use the super fine to finish it up. And then these are some super fine pads. You can see this one's 1800 grit, this one's 1500 grit, 4000 grit. The higher the number, the finer the grit. So when you're starting out with you know, step one, you want to get something that's coarse. You want to go over something that's like 100 or 150 grade, and then from there you move up. I mean, some of these like 3500 and the 4000, I guess it's kind of a little bit of overkill, but what can you do? Another good tool when you're sanding, I have a brush here that I use specifically to wipe the dust away, or you know, any debris that's left over after you sand something. Bunch of another piece of sandpaper that belongs over there. Bunch of pliers. Pliers are always useful. Come in handy for lots of different tasks. Screwdrivers, same thing. X-Acto blades, X-Acto knives. Can't live without those. This is a little thing they make called a brush tub, and what you do is you fill it with water so that while you're working, you don't have to stop and run to the sink every time you finish with a brush. I know I don't have a sink in my workroom, so I pretty much, when I'm done painting a specific color, I'll clean my brushes real quick, and I'll leave them to the side so that they're semi-clean after coming out of this brush tub, but I still take them to the sink afterwards and give them a thorough cleaning, because you don't really want to get your brushes all gunked up with dried paint and stuff like that. You can also see some of my little work in progress pictures here. That is a Venom head, and that is Venom's tongue that will go inside Venom's mouth when I'm done, and that's Venom's body. There's a little Iron Man that I was working on. Iron Patriot, actually. It's going to become Iron Patriot from the Dark Avengers story. Continuing on with my little tour here. These are some sculpting tools. You can see I have quite a few. These are probably my favorite ones. These are little rubber tip clay shapers. They're very soft, rubbery tips, allow you to move the clay in a variety of ways to achieve the result you're looking for. These are more shapers. They're like a wire, like a metal piece that you can use to scrape away clay. Then you have like the regular conventional dental pick type pieces that you can also use for sculpting. Then there's some plastic ones. There's all kinds of junk in there. Next I have a little miscellaneous cup. Keep like pens and pencils, toothbrushes, which I use to clean any of the base figures that I'm going to use before I get started. I'll wash everything with soap and water, and I'll use a toothbrush to get inside all the joints and get it, get a really good cleaning going on there. This one I have more sanding. I have nail files. Again, useful for doing any kind of sanding. If you cut something and it's got a jagged edge, you can sand it. Tweezers, which can come in handy when you have to work with some small pieces. These are really kind of cool. These are rounded ceramic files that are really made for pottery. I found them in the craft store. And the usage that they showed it for was for, if you look at a flower pot, on the bottom of the flower pot there's like a little round opening. Well, that file goes in there, and you can, sand that. I guess if you're making your own flower pots, you can use those, but I use them for other stuff because I don't make flower pots. Brushes, I probably have about 200 paint brushes. Not all of them are shown in here. Why do I have so many? Kind of like I was saying before, with, you paint a color, clean the brush, put it to the side, you go on to the next color, you need a new brush. You can't really, well, personally I don't like to use a brush that's wet to paint with unless I'm trying to achieve a wash, which is a whole different story. But when you're just doing regular painting, you don't really want to wash your brush and go right back to painting with it, or at least I don't, because I feel that you can screw up your paint a little bit and screw up your work. This is another neat little piece that I got. It's a little a little paint mixer, battery operated. You stick that in your little paint pot, turn it on for a couple seconds, mixes your paints up nice. Don't have to worry about unmixed paints. In the back there I have some gloves, some heavy gloves for when I'm doing Dremel work, if I'm cutting something or if I'm grinding something down and it's a small piece and I'm afraid I'm going to grind my fingers, which has happened more times than I like to remember. I'll wear the gloves. The rubber gloves are for when I'm doing any kind of molding or casting. I'll put those gloves on for that. And well, that's going to be the end of part 1, because we're approaching the 10-minute mark and YouTube is pretty strict with their time limits. So I'm going to end part 1 here, and I hope you will join me for part 2. See ya.